Dollar and discount stores have been around for decades, but there's one store in particular that is not quite like all the rest. A typical budget store is usually designed around practicality, selling groceries, home goods, and other essential items for low prices. Five Below is a store that works on a similar concept as far as keeping prices low, but instead of stocking practical stuff, it's full of cool stuff. AKA anything flashy, trendy, or something that you probably don't need, but that's fun just to have and look at anyway. But it's not just about what's cool in general. Five Below specifically targets a demographic of ages 8 to 15, aiming to capitalize on fads and pop culture by catering to teens, tweens, and trends. The stock is focused around not just what parents would buy for their kids, but what kids would buy for themselves. One of the store's founders, David Schlesinger, mentioned that Five Below was intended to be the place that kids will go after they've outgrown the toy store. Even just the name helps draw in a younger audience, meaning Five Below like $5 and below, and Five Below Zero like the temperature. You know, cool. It may not seem like a big deal, but even in this simple branding, the store was really reaching towards its intended audience. When I was a young, cringy tween myself, I remember thinking that the store's name did make it seem inherently more modern and appealing than other discount stores like Dollar Tree or Family Dollar, which seemed stiff and boring by comparison. Although the business was founded in 2002, starting off with just a single store in Pennsylvania, things didn't really start taking off until 2010 when the locations started expanding, which coincidentally is also when a store opened in my hometown. In 2025, Five Below is still trendy and successful, but in its earlier years, it was a different experience. The actual business model wasn't all that different as far as marketing #cool products to #teens. But the sheer early 2010s of it all was definitely a sight to behold, and a vital period to shaping its future success. This was the era of animal print and mustaches, Bieber fever and directioners, jeggings and graphic tees, and almost every aisle in Five Below was dedicated to stocking all of it in a crowded display of colorful, organized chaos. There were plenty of other stores that also kept up with the trends of the young people around this time, but Five Below was unique in offering almost everything in a one-stop shop. If you went to the mall instead, you'd have to visit Hollister for your overpriced cologne-scented shirt, swing by Bath & Body Works for body spray, maneuver around a 4-year-old getting their ears pierced at Claire's for your own earrings that turn your skin green, hit Cinnabon for your snacks, and probably still window shop in a few other places along the way, which sounds exhausting. At Five Below, though, you could get pretty much all the variety from your favorite stores at the mall in a single place. It's just like that one meme says.
You can stop at 5 or 6 stores or just one.
I don't remember my very first time walking into Five Below, but I definitely remember that every time I did go in as a middle schooler, it felt like wandering through a tweenage wonderland made just for me, catering to all the interests I didn't even know I had because I was 12 and still finding myself. But that was part of the beauty of it, not knowing exactly what was in store and what weird and/or semi-useless items you could discover as you explored. Having such a wide variety of items that didn't pertain to one particular style or purpose was a big benefit of the store's business model, catering to a demographic that's not just already following a trend, but also actively looking for new ones to follow. In an age before Instagram, TikTok, and social media in general, plenty of fads would come and go without much influence from the internet at all. A more old-school method of just seeing lots of people wearing or doing something, adopting it to join the cool crowd, and becoming part of the cycle yourself. Five Below in the 2010s functioned as not just a place to purchase what's popular, but find out about it for yourself at the same time, and then buy it for $5 or less. But thinking about how or why trends were popularized is boring. I know what you really want to see. Neon zebra print rhinestone iPhone 4 cases. A single item that manages to encapsulate the entire essence of 2012. As long as there have been modern cell phones and iPods, there have been cases and skins available for them. But I seem to remember phone cases becoming increasingly popular as an accessory, especially in the early 2010s, in that it didn't matter all that much what was on your phone case, but it was considered cool just to have a phone or iPod to put a case on in the first place. Because of that, there are so many examples of popular patterns and styles in all the countless old phone case designs from the time. Whatever was on it, it couldn't be just a regular case. It had to be stylish and personalized, something that shows everyone you're hip, something that speaks to you, something that says, "Every day I'm shuffling." For any younger members of Gen Z or Gen Alpha out there that don't see the vision in these designs, neon, peace signs, and zebra print were basically like the wavy checkerboard pattern of the 2010s. These designs weren't just limited to phone cases though. Throughout Five Below, more neon colors and animal prints, along with chevron, polka dots, boho chic, anything in these specific shades of blue and green, and every other popular eyesore pattern were printed on everything from scarves and belts to slap bracelets and duct tape, which you would use to DIY a wallet, of course. And speaking of wearable fashion, Five Below had a pretty sizable collection of graphic tees too, which at the time were popular in the way that phone cases were popular. It was kinda cool just to be wearing one at all. When it came to graphic tees, you didn't have to wear a particular logo or brand, it just had to be a shirt with something printed on it, and suddenly you were in on the fad. Though, of course, you did get bonus cool points if you had some kind of sarcastic, punny, or lolxd random phrase written on it to match the humor of the time, as seen in some of these examples that might look cringe now, but were once considered very fashionable. It's not like graphic tees are entirely phased out nowadays, but the vibes in the 2010s were unmatched. I remember buying one myself at Five Below circa 2011, a red baseball tee that had cartoon spaghetti and meatballs on it saying, "We belong together," or something like that, because cutesy food-based stuff was considered peak quirky girly fashion at the time, for some reason. As a girl in middle school during this era, I also frequented Five Below's beauty section, despite this being before the 2016 makeup guru boom, and my only experience with beauty products being limited to Webkinz body spray and these exact lip glosses. I also used to bite my nails all the time as a kid, but did that stop me from buying tons of Five Below Funky Fingers nail polish in highlighter yellow to match the same egregious fluorescent color of my quirky shoelaces? Of course not, because it was only $2. There was also a big perfume section. I bought this exact one that's in this ad in like 2011, and I remember that just having the bottle sitting in my room made me feel sophisticated, along with body wash, eyeshadow, and chapstick, including EOS lip balm, which was yet another very trendy item of the 2010s. All these specific examples are to really highlight the diversity in Five Below's product range. I was clearly mostly in it for the more feminine stuff that I thought would make me fit in with the popular girls at school, but there were still so many other items that also appealed to kids in general, or were especially geared towards other fads. Justin Bieber and One Direction were the popular artists, parabands and power bands were the popular kind of scammy bracelets, and there were even popular foods, all supplied by your trendy neighborhood Five Below. I always asked my mom to buy me Pocky and Monster Energy because I thought that showing that I consumed the popular branded food items would make me seem cooler, which might not have actually made me cooler because my main interests were Smosh and Rage comics, but frequenting Five Below was an important contributor of at least trying to look the part. Thinking back to how eating Pocky made me feel trendy, or how using some $3 bottle of perfume gave me a sense of sophistication, has me considering that all of these emotional byproducts are yet another important factor of what made Five Below successful. Any store that stocks popular items is going to benefit from fulfilling the demand, no matter what people end up feeling about what they bought. But Five Below also benefited from targeting a demographic that wasn't just young, but impressionable. Considering my personal experience as an example, it's clear that teens and tweens tend to seek something from shopping beyond just a new material item. cool points, acceptance, self-expression, and Five Below offered an experience around wanting to fit in and exploring an identity. Again, half the fun was just window shopping to soak in the atmosphere of what the store had to offer. That, combined with the store's price point that made it so that almost anyone could find at least a few things they could afford, even if they only had $10 of birthday money to spend from grandma, created the ideal environment for growth. Five Below's founders have often commented over the years that the store aims to provide a treasure hunt for its customers, focusing on frequent small purchases of products that aren't necessarily intended to meet your needs, but that encourage you to let go and have fun. Or, in other words, buy stuff just because it's kinda cool and only costs a couple bucks. And this treasure and trend hunting business model only became more successful as the brand continued to grow, opening tons of new stores as it expanded outside of its eastern US focus and reaching 400 stores by mid-2015. Five Below did have a website since around 2010, but in the beginning it was essentially just an online catalog that advertised products. An online shopping function wasn't added until 7 years later, which, while it was a little overdue, also couldn't have come at a more opportune time, as 2017 was also the year of fidget spinners. Y'all remember those? The rise of fidget spinners aligned perfectly with Five Below's existing business model of selling cheap plastic trendy things for kids. It was a fad that didn't really have a purpose and was not going to last, but that's mostly what the store had specialized in for over a decade by this point. I'm sure plenty of other stores also sold fidget spinners around this time, probably for similar prices too, but considering Five Below's existing reputation, it was a very convenient way to bring in sales and further establish themselves as a cool and modern brand. And with the help of fidget spinners, an online store to buy them from, and the new audience that both of these things brought in, the brand just continued to expand. I haven't been in a Five Below in years, and it kind of still exists in my head as a perfect snapshot of early 2010s culture, but it hasn't been quite like that old version for a while now. Especially from the fidget spinner craze and onward, there was an even clearer focus on catering to the younger members of Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and their particular, sometimes peculiar, tastes. I'm talking emojis this, sequins that, slime mermaid minions frozen everything else. The aim was always to cash in on trends, but as the trends became even more specific with these younger generations, they became even more marketable. It was no longer as easy as it once was to just produce generic kid merchandise like my spaghetti and meatballs shirt, or sell a Snuggie for $5 and call it a day. The internet, with its influencers and YouTubers and social media, was becoming a space for viral products to come and go faster than ever before, while also being a prime environment for engaging with and posting about trends as they were popularized. Not to mention that new fads weren't just more frequent, but could also be expensive, either from the stacking costs for each new purchase, or if a cool new item happened to be pretty expensive itself. Any store that could manage to swoop in before each micro-trend was phased out, ideally with a dupe that was priced at $5 or less, was able to perfectly capitalize on their peak yet short-lived popularity. Meaning, a store like Five Below that always had cheap, rotating stock was in the ideal position. Being a kid or teenager in this current climate really sounds exhausting sometimes. I can't imagine being 12 and trying to keep up with buying stuff like overpriced Lululemon leggings and Stanley cups just to fit in. But not everything that's popular is costly. I'd say probably even more of Five Below's appeal comes from stocking things that aren't trying to be something else and are popular because they're on the more affordable side, and fit right into their regular stock. Things like Squishmallows and blind bag collectible toys are smaller and generally lower cost, but are still some of the most trendy and accessible toys for kids. So of course, they're regularly sold at Five Below. Though keeping such consistently low prices apparently wasn't viable enough to last forever. The $5 and below price point was initially established in 2002, and over the years has become even more of a bargain as other retail prices continue to rise, which is great for shoppers but not as great for the brand. In 2019, the store introduced higher price tags on certain tech items, calling it $10 tech, While the actual dollar amount was raised by only $5, it definitely still caused some concern about how the store would continue to handle inflation going forward. And lo and behold, this trend of increasing prices only continued into the following years, as 5 Beyond was rolled out, a section of the store with bigger items priced above $5, ranging all the way up to $25. Since these sections were contained to the back of the stores and were pretty clearly labeled as being more expensive, the business still continued to operate as Five Below, even if the below part didn't always apply anymore. Most of the backlash surrounding this change related to customers not just being frustrated at the higher price points in general, but wondering if the higher prices were even worth paying. While a large part of Five Below's success did come from catering to their target demographic and making shopping cheap and fun, this model also only worked so well because the prices matched the quality. $1 to $5 is a reasonable cost if you're buying something small and non-essential or otherwise not intended for long-term use. Prices in the $10 range and upwards, though, tend to imply higher quality or a more practical purpose. But what if the product isn't necessarily better or a bigger luxury, but the same as all the other stuff in Five Below, but just slightly bigger and with a higher price tag? This raises the question of what Five Below's standard for quality even is, and how much it can be justified for the sake of having a good time shopping. When the main draw of the store is finding cheap treasures, those treasures don't need to be made to last, but just cheap and flashy enough to seem worth buying and maybe see a couple years of use afterwards. Overconsumption is already a very common issue in America, and Five Below doesn't just promote it, but is built on it. While focusing on fast-moving trends is fun and fills a market of cringy tweens trying to look cool at school, it also perpetuates the idea that you always should be buying into the latest trend and buying something new. It's a store filled with things you don't need, providing a dopamine hit that won't even last long after the initial novelty wears off. Combined with the poor quality of a lot of the products, it raises an ethical concern about just how many of these unicorn glitter slime things are being made just to inevitably be thrown away. Product recalls, while sometimes can be the result of a simple mistake or accident, are still often a side effect of cutting corners in production to save money. And some of the items sold at Five Below over the years that have been recalled are clear examples of items not just breaking or wearing down, but actually being dangerous because of their poor quality. $10 tech sounds nice until your phone charger catches on fire or your LED light spare starts melting. And sure, Five Below is just the retailer, not the manufacturer of these items, but I'm sure they're still aware that most of their stock doesn't have the highest level of quality and sells it anyway because that's what they're all about. Although Five Below has continued to grow over the years, even post-COVID and temporary store shutdowns, and amid product recalls and backlash over raised prices, retail in general is still in a tough position in the mid-2020s. And a store based on treasure hunting especially is harder to keep profitable when less and less customers have the time or money to treasure hunt at all, worrying about buying actual groceries and essentials instead of the newest incendiary phone charger. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Consumer habits are changing. Stores like Temu and Amazon are also offering low competitive prices for cheap novelties, and the cost of living continues to rise, among other unfortunate realities of the uncertain financial state in America and the rest of the world. There's much less incentive in 2025 for most people to just buy something for the thrill of buying, even if it is cheap, and Five Below and other stores like it are taking a hit because of this. But maybe, considering all its faults, that could be a step in the right direction. Of course, I'm not saying that no one should ever shop at Five Below again, or that making small, cheap purchases just for the fun of it is a terrible idea. I personally love to buy knickknacks and trinkets and plenty of things that don't have a functional purpose other than just to look cute, and I think that's more than okay. I got these Agretzko figures at a Five Below years ago, and I love them. I just think that Five Below and its business practices are a reminder to stay conscientious about how, where, and what you're spending your money on. There's a difference between budget stores that sell cheap items to save you money compared to stores that cut corners and rely on fads to make themselves money. You don't have to buy the neon yellow nail polish or the $100 leggings just because someone on TikTok convinced you to. At the end of the day, you should buy something because you personally like it, and consider whether it's worth the price and your money if you don't really need it. Because even though I am nostalgic for the old Five Below, the trends in the 2010s, and I do still think it has some cool stuff in the modern store, I think we all deserve to have a phone charger that doesn't explode when you plug it in. Hi, welcome to JellyTV, where I shout out a video that I think deserves some love. I recommend watching Let's Talk About Nintendo DS Girly Pop Shovelware Games by Pink Gamer. In this video, Delaney covers the nuance behind girly DS games that are often labeled as shovelware. She mentions that a lot of these games deserve more credit and aren't inherently bad just because they're made for kids or centered around feminine genres. I personally started as a girl gamer myself on my pink DS when I was a kid, and I loved hearing Delaney's take on having a similar experience. Justice for girl gamers. A huge thank you to Daniel E. from ABQ, Kevin Evans, Bunzo, Karis Desarun, Chumpy, Hayden Campbell, India W, Lojua Animal, Lou, Luna Stephenson, Mark Kent, Neko-san, Nighttime Coral, Ollie E, Paper Sam, Pharmamags, Pixel Puppy, Shaples, Theodore Nicolawilius, Vivian Valencia, and the rest of my patrons for supporting me.